Happy Monday morning. It is time, bright and early, for some Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I am Jason Fitz. We have so much to get it. It was the wildest weekend in sports I can remember in a long time. There were not enough TVs to be able to keep up with everything that happened all day Sunday. But we're going to try and do our best to get you caught up on all of it over the course of the next 2 hours. Caroline Fenton, we will start this hour like we start every single hour with 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
News updates.
Yeah, pretty much a minimum of 4 screens at all times going back to Friday night. And what you said was an absolutely stacked sports weekend. And it continued late into last night when we had a 40-40 overtime tie on Sunday Night Football. I don't know how many times that has happened in NFL history, but I have to believe that it is an absolute statistical anomaly. And we like to adopt the theory of we talk about the winning team first, but there was no winning team in a tie last night. So I will talk about my biggest takeaway from the evening. Dak Prescott was absolutely fantastic. He was 31 of 40, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, and added a touchdown on the ground as well, including a 28-yard touchdown pass to take the lead with less than a minute left in regulation. And also to add on top of that, just how impressive Dak Prescott was last night. He did it without CeeDee Lamb, his number 1 receiver, and he was without 2 interior offensive linemen and right guard Tyler Booker and center Cooper Beebe. But how frustrating is it that Dak Prescott had the night that he had? I think when we look back on Dak Prescott's career, whenever the day comes that he does decide to hang it up, we will look back on his performance last night as one of the best of his career. So how does all of that happen? How does Dak Prescott look as good as he looked and the Cowboys can't find a way to win? Well, that's what happens when your defense gives up 500 total yards of offense and 40 points. That's been the story of this Cowboys team all season long, that Dak can look great, that CeeDee Lamb can come up and George Pickens can come up with acrobatic catches like he did last night. And the defense can't get it together. The defense can't stop the run. The defense cannot stop the passing game. The defense can't get pressure on the quarterback. And that's exactly what you saw last night. The Dallas Cowboys defense is one of the worst in the NFL and is a liability for what looks like a really, really good Cowboys offense. But on the other side of things, Green Bay, I think you're just as frustrated. You know, you're frustrated that you haven't been able to put all of the pieces together in back-to-back weeks. Last week, the Green Bay Packers defense was fantastic. It was stifling, held the Cleveland Browns to just 13 points, but Jordan Love and the offense couldn't come up with more than 10. This week, Jordan Love in the offense was humming. Josh Jacobs, 2 touchdowns. Jordan Love with over 300 yards passing, putting up 40 points. But the defense couldn't get that pressure on Dak Prescott. That Micah Parsons, yes, he got his revenge on his former team and was able to get a sack on Dak Prescott, but it didn't come until overtime. So I think you're looking at both of these teams, with different expectations. Green Bay, Super Bowl expectations. Dallas Cowboys, I guess we'll see. But both of these teams struggling to put all of the pieces together and play complementary football week over week. We'll see how a tie affects the standings in an incredibly deep NFC. But I'm sure everyone will be super, super chill Fits about the who won the Micah Parsons trade today.
Yeah, it feels fitting that the Micah Parsons trade ends in a tie in that game. And by the way, you're right, 40-40, the second highest total ever in an NFL tie. Now for the rest of the year, we're going to have to do math. It's going to be, it's a half a game because of the damn tie. The rest of the year, thank you so much, Green Bay and Dallas. I'll get to my first point. We'll get more into the Cowboys later in the show, obviously, because they're the Cowboys, and there's a lot to break down there. But while you were footballing on Sunday, Major League Baseball gave us drama all the way down to the very last second, and now the postseason is set and ready to begin. And it is, to use Caroline Fenton's word, juicy. We've got some matchups here that are absolutely delightful. In the AL, we have the Yankees hosting the Red Sox. I can just feel the excitement from MLB headquarters as they get Yankees, Red Sox in the wild card round. That's the 4-5 series. And then Cleveland is hosting Detroit. That's right. Neither the Guardians nor the Tigers really wanted to win their division. They tried to lose their way all the way through it, but somebody's got to. So now you've got Cleveland, Detroit in the 3-6 matchup. We will continue to see the division rivalry and then see what will happen for the Tigers if they can keep, I don't know, the schneid away that they've been through the course of the end of the season. Toronto captures the 1. The big dumper gets the 2. I mean, there's an entire Mariners team, but they're just a big dumper. They get the 1 and the 2. So that's your AL side of it. From the NL side of it, 4-5 is Cubs versus the Padres. And then the Reds sneak in. The Reds sneak into this and get the 6th seed where they were rewarded by taking on the 3-seed Dodgers. Notice I mentioned multiple times the Reds, Cincinnati, a city that we've talked on this show repeatedly about loving, and all of the great things at Cincinnati now include things like Kings Island and playoff baseball. Why? Because the Mets met it. That's exactly what they did. We knew they were going to do it. I'm sorry, the Mets, to Mets fans everywhere, there is one piece of good news I can offer you. At least now the suffering is over. You don't have to watch any playoff baseball to wonder when your misery is going to continue. And no matter how much money they spend, no matter how much they try and change things, the brand of the Mets will always still conquer all of the opportunities in front of them. The Mets figure out a way to Met. But congratulations to the Reds. We're all in on this. That is your Major League Baseball playoff sort of recap to get you caught up and ready for the action that starts this week. It is going to be electrifying, and we'll keep you caught up on it on Yahoo Sports throughout the way. Let's get to our main topic as we start the show, and it was supposed to be the matchup of the ages, the Sunday football matchup that everybody had to watch, the Sunday football matchup that would teach us everything we need to know about two of the most important contenders in the AFC, Chiefs-Ravens. Turns out it wasn't much of a matchup because the Chiefs absolutely beat the snot out of Baltimore. Baltimore's defense was exactly what Baltimore's defense has been all year, but Baltimore's offense couldn't really get on track. The Chiefs kind of look like the Chiefs of old Caroline. Are the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes back?
Well, yes, but if you watch this show and listen to us talk about the Kansas City Chiefs over the last month, you would know that the Chiefs didn't really go anywhere. In order to be back, you have to go away. And over the last 4 weeks, we have talked about the Kansas City Chiefs, the fact that they were going to get better whenever Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy came back from suspension and injury, respectively. That there was going to be more for this Chiefs offense to do and more tools for Patrick Mahomes to work with whenever those two came back. So I never really believed that the Chiefs went anywhere. Did it look bad? Yes. The offense stalled. Unfortunately, yes, it did. Was there a panic button being pressed in Kansas City? I'm sure to a certain extent, yes, there was. But we knew that this team was going to get better. And unfortunately, the Kansas City Chiefs tend to play with their food at the beginning of the season. They've done it the past couple of seasons. So Xavier Worthy comes back, and what do you know? The Chiefs offense has another level of speed to it, has another level of explosiveness to it, that Patrick Mahomes looks like the Patrick Mahomes that we know and that we love, that Xavier Worthy was able to make big plays through the air, big plays on the ground with a massive 35-yard run. So if you listen to us, you would have understood that this was probably coming, that the Chiefs offense was going to have another layer of explosiveness to it whenever they added explosive receivers back into the offense. Isn't it crazy how that works? But to answer your question, yes, the Chiefs are back. They never really ever went anywhere.
And to that end, one of my favorite exercises is take the brands off and take everything you think about the brands off and just make a statement. If I make the statement, team minus their two best wide receivers struggles offensively. Of course. Like, what did we expect? That's why this show has been consistent that the Chiefs are going to be just fine. Xavier Worthy comes back, and that's one piece. When they get Rashee Rice, it'll be an even bigger piece. But now I want to do the opposite. I want to take the sort of the mindset and just make a blanket statement. Is it time to start talking about Harbaugh and the Ravens the same way we talk about Tomlin and the Steelers? Because I'll be fair and say that I don't think either of these coaches should be on the hot seat because, frankly, they consistently win. But if the measure of success for the Steelers organization has not been met by Mike Tomlin and the fact that they haven't been successful enough for quite a while, couldn't you say the same thing? Like, is it time to actually put Harbaugh on a hot seat? Because we talk a lot about when does the messaging get stale. Okay, well, I don't know the exact answer for that. I don't think that there's a real formula for it, but the details and the results will at some point speak for themselves. And I'm watching a Ravens team that just, for whatever reason, consistently in this game thought that it was a really good idea to not have Derrick Henry on the field in 3rd and 4th and short. Like, I don't understand it. There are enough things that went wrong in this game that I don't understand. I don't understand why their defense isn't getting better week to week. I don't understand why their offense isn't able to, run the tush push as well as the Eagles can, considering the legs that they have there with Derrick Henry. I don't understand why the Ravens are struggling the way the Ravens are struggling, but I think it's pretty real to just acknowledge the fact that the way they lost this game, they couldn't do anything against the Chiefs defense. Their offense looked just out of whack the entire time, and their defense on the field just got the snot kicked out of them over and over again. Like, is there a spot where we look around and say, maybe the fix in Baltimore actually has to come at the highest possible level?
I think we can have a hot seat conversation. But I also would like to say that I think every hot seat conversation comes with nuance, and that there are varying degrees of heat to hot seat conversations, right? Because we're talking about Brian Callahan and Tennessee and how his seat is hot, but it is significantly hotter. It is hot to the touch. It is scalding in Tennessee. That's much different than what it is in Baltimore. I think the hot seat conversation can be, you're about to be fired, or we need more from you. And I think that's the John Harbaugh conversation, is we need more from you. We need more from this team. Because if you want to look at it from the glass half full perspective, you can say, okay, well, it's not every week that we're going to play a Super Bowl contender. And the Ravens have played legitimate Super Bowl contenders in 3 of the first 4 weeks of the season. It's not every single week that Derrick Henry is going to fumble the football, or that Lamar Jackson is going to throw an interception and fumble and hurt his hamstring. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. That there have been things that have gone wrong, and the caliber of the schedule early in the season can give you optimism moving forward. Of all of those things that have gone wrong, there's no way that those things are going to continue to go wrong. I think that those things are true. But even with that, even with the nuance and understanding that things probably aren't going to be as bad the rest of the season as it was in the first 4 weeks, I still don't think the Ravens can be considered a Super Bowl contender from what we've seen and what we know right now. That defense is not Super Bowl caliber. You don't take care of the football, that's not Super Bowl DNA. You can't run the football with Derrick Henry the way they were able to do it last season. That's not Super Bowl DNA either. And it was Super Bowl or bust in Baltimore. So you have to start asking questions at the top. And it starts with John Harbaugh.
I think it's also fair to just say organizationally, like, I have been really tough on the Bengals for the last several years, because every year that they waste, that they're not in the Super Bowl or in that conversation, is a wasted year with Joe Burrow, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Well, I want to hold that same standard to Baltimore. Like, Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP, and there are people that work for Yahoo Sports that have said loudly that he's maybe the best quarterback we've ever seen at his age, right?
He could have been a 3-time MVP.
I mean, so at some point, every year that Baltimore doesn't have the pieces around him to win the Super Bowl, if I'm being fair and consistent, I need to be as harsh on Baltimore for wasting Lamar as I am on the Bengals for wasting Joe Burrow. And at this point, this season is starting to feel like it's teetering on the edge of becoming a waste. Now, do you believe that the Ravens are done, though? Because obviously 1-3, we said we wouldn't panic on Friday, but seeing the way 1-3 happened, are the Ravens left for dead?
No, they're not done yet, but it is getting there. We are approaching done territory. The season right now is kind of a seesaw that's teetering back and forth. They're not done because the division is very much so still winnable, although the Steelers keep winning, so the gap is getting a little bit larger. I still think that the Ravens, even with their issues, are the best team in that division, and that division is still winnable. But that being said, you're digging yourself into a hole, and it's not even just a hole that you can see in the standings. It's not even just a hole that we can see in the win-loss record and say, man, they just got unlucky and lost some of those games that they could have won. No, they're getting their butt whooped in some of these games. So the season's not done, but a lot of things need to change. And the way that we heard Harbaugh and Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson talking about this team over the last couple of weeks, that's not the way that we hear the Ravens talk about themselves, of we need to go back to the drawing board and we're not a good enough football team right now. That's not the Ravens that I know and that you know and that we all know.
Plenty of injury concern. We'll keep you updated if we get any updates. Lamar Jackson, for anyone that didn't see it, did leave last night's game with a hamstring injury. Shame on everybody out there on Twitter that's decided that maybe he was waving a white flag. We've done this before with Lamar. That's all I will say on this, Carolina, is we've done this before. When he was waiting for his contract and wanted his fully guaranteed money, people speculated that he was coming back from injury slower because he didn't want to put himself at risk, which we later found out was an asinine take, and he was putting his body through everything he possibly could. I don't want to do the same thing again. And if you're a Twitter conspiracy theorist that has a picture of where his leg was iced, I would just tell you, as someone that has literally torn 2 hamstrings and a tendon off of my kneecap, you can tear a hamstring anywhere, and where you have to ice it varies based on what the injury is. So, Twitter, sit down, shut up, and color in your books and give the man some respect instead of implying that Lamar Jackson is turning around and being anything less than available because you think some kind of way. That's all I have to say to Ravens fans. We got a lot of football we got to break down. We are just getting rolling, obviously, on the show. Coming up next, Philly is 4-0, so you would think there'd be rejoicing everywhere, but there isn't. There's drama. We'll tell you about it next. Here's the quote. If you're not welcomed, not listened to, quietly withdraw. Don't make a scene. Shrug your shoulders and be on your way. That was posted by A.J. Brown after Philadelphia went to 4-0 by way of beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So what do we know? We know that A.J. Brown is either reading a really interesting book this year or he's in his feels. Now, the Eagles went 4-0, but here's the context. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz on Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline, the Eagles offense put up 33 yards total in the second half, and they were 0 for 8 throwing the football. They did not complete a single pass in the second half. They are 4-0. They are undefeated, and they did that without A.J. Brown making a single play of consequence in the second half. And he's obviously in his feels, but I guess, what do you want? Your team's 4-0. You're the defending Super Bowl champions. You're 4-0, and you're not happy?
Yeah, I think that this is the perfect example of that one tweet that always goes viral whenever a wide receiver tweets something like this. And it's like, here's how a quarterback tweets, like, great team win, everybody, go team. And a receiver tweets like, my enemy speaks slow and carries. And there it is. There it is. It's like, that is exactly what A.J. Brown is tweeting out, these cryptic but also not very cryptic tweets that are kind of airing out a little bit of the dirty laundry. But this is nothing new with AJ Brown. AJ Brown takes to Twitter or takes to the media every time that he feels like he is being slighted. If it's not him reading a book on the sidelines whenever he doesn't get targeted enough. It's tweeting something out like this. And this has been something that he's been kind of notorious for in the entirety of his career. It goes back to when I covered him in Nashville when he was with the Tennessee Titans. Every opportunity that he had to speak his mind, he would do it in a cryptic tweet like this. But to your point, yes, your team is 4-0. Your team just won the Super Bowl. And even though the Eagles aren't winning games in the prettiest of ways, just like they didn't win in the prettiest of ways against the Bucs on Sunday, they're still winning football games. And it seems like the best key and the best version of this Eagles offense is by running the football, whether it's with Saquon, whether it's with Jalen Hurts, if it's, quick, short passes in the passing game. Like, that's how this team is winning games. So how upset can AJ Brown really be? I understand if you're not getting the football and you're losing football games, that breeds a lot of frustration. And I would 100% understand that. But you are winning games. Your team is still very much so a Super Bowl contender. And oh yeah, by the way, have you looked to see who the Eagles' leading receiver is in the season so far? It's AJ Brown. AJ Brown is the leading receiver on this football team. They just don't throw the ball enough, Fitz. They don't throw the ball a lot. And that's okay, because they're winning football games. Winning undoes a whole lot of ugly.
You got your money. You got your massive contract. You got your ring. And your team is 4-0. Like, what is it that's going to keep you happy? And at some point, I guess, don't you, if you're A.J. Brown, look at some of the superstars that play in this league right now. They would give anything just to win, just to have that feeling. Like, we talk every week about what's going through Myles Garrett's mind as a pass rusher, what's going through Max Crosby's mind as a pass rusher on teams that just suck, right? So A.J. Brown is sitting here on a team that is undefeated, that beat another undefeated team in Tampa Bay that's coming off a big win. And you make it about you? Like, at this point, you make it about the fact that you're going to go away silently? Is that what you're telling everybody? Because we're certainly not, that's not on brand for how you do anything, A.J. Brown. And I don't understand it. And frankly, if I'm the Eagles, I truly do not care. I'm talking about every player in the locker room, every coach, every person in the organization. If A.J. wants to come out and complain, I'll laugh at him. You got your money, you're getting a ring, and you're doing what we need you to do in this offense. So we as a team are living up to our end of the deal because we are utilizing what we need to utilize to win, and you are a piece of that. And we paid you handsomely to be a piece of that. And you are not here to be all of that. So for A.J. Brown, as much as he may want to go anywhere, I don't give a damn if I'm Philadelphia. If he comes in and says, trade me if you're not going to use me, I would laugh in his face and say, go back to work. Like, this is just impossible to me to think that you could be sitting here at 4-0 and you're having to justify what your wide receiver is playing. This is asinine.
It's silly and it's juvenile. I think the way that A.J. Brown handles any of his frustrations. If you have an actual legitimate issue with what's going on offensively, have the conversation with your coaching staff. But again, the coaching staff, I think, has every right to laugh in his face and say, get back to work because we are playing a winning brand of football. And I'm sorry if that's not good enough for you. But I think taking to Twitter, it's not just AJ. I think any player or any coach that takes to social media to air out their grievances is immature and is a distraction. You bring up a trade. I think that we can have the conversation of, is AJ Brown a locker room problem all day long? At this point, I don't think that he is. I think that his antics have now do not, supersede the winning. I don't think that his antics can really shift the culture in the locker room. If they start losing, maybe we'll see. I don't see the Eagles going on an epic and catastrophic losing streak so much so that it would become a big-time culture problem in the locker room. But you bring up a trade. I don't think the Eagles are going to trade A.J. Brown. Why should they? But if I'm the Patriots, if I'm Mike Vrabel, I look at a young quarterback in Drake May that could be aided by veteran leadership around him, or at least a veteran presence around him, could absolutely be better with one of the best receivers in the NFL. That's what I think A.J. Brown is. And Mike Vrabel and A.J. Brown have a wonderful relationship. I mean, Mike Vrabel even talked about it, how much appreciation he has for A.J., how much respect he has for A.J. A.J.'s like a son to Mike Vrabel. You add A.J. Brown to that Patriots team, all of a sudden, I think it is much more lethal. I think Drake May becomes that much better of a quarterback. And A.J. Brown loves Mike Vrabel. I would at least pick up the phone. If I'm the Eagles, I'm not doing it. I laugh into the phone, I hang up. But I would at least kick the tires if A.J. Brown is so unhappy in Philadelphia. Would you like to be reunited with your former head coach from Tennessee?
Look, and if I'm the Eagles,
It's
I
worth
want
a
a
shot.
mountain of draft picks. I want a mountain of draft picks. I don't need players. My roster's really good right now. Maybe a second corner would be nice to pick up. But I want a mountain of draft picks because I got Howie Roseman. So those draft picks are worth more to me than they are to most. Look, what about, give me this one. What about the Giants calling and say, hey, we gave you Saquon. Like, maybe get back with us. Like, we gave you Saquon. Like, we let Saquon go there. Not that simple, but, like, Saquon's there. Throw us a bone. It would never happen within the same division, but I love the idea of the Giants at least calling Joe Schoen being like, hey, man, you guys watched the show. I watched the show. Like, I kind of look like an idiot for letting Saquon go. Maybe throw me a bone here. Okay, it's never going to happen. What about like a team like 49ers? Maybe a team
But
that's
it
in
would
their
make
Super
sense
Bowl
with the
window.
Giants, though. They just lost more than likely from the last that I have seen. More than likely, Malik Nabers is done for the season. If he did, in fact, tear his ACL, which I think was the concern of many. Jaxson Dart needs a certified number one receiver. That's not what Wan'Dale Robinson can be. It would literally never happen. But I see the gears turning, Fitzy.
Do you another team? Is there anybody else on your mind that you think Super Bowl contender that might be out there? Wants AJ?
The Niners are interesting. That would never happen. But with the Niners being as injury ridden as they are, I mean, you add in AJ Brown, he kind of replaces the Deebo Samuel type of role that you had on that team. Would never happen. It's fun to kick the tires, though.
I like the Niners. I'll raise you the Chiefs. Again, Eagles are never going to make a trade with the Chiefs, but I like the idea of sending them to Kansas City, being like, hey, now you have Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and A.J. Brown. Like, now, all right, now the Chiefs all of a sudden are right back to the Chiefs dynasty. I will point out for everybody that doesn't know logistically, according to overthecap.com, the dead cap hit right now, if they traded A.J. Brown, would be about $60 million. The Eagles only have about $13 million. So before anybody gets too excited about the possibility, there is no cap space. I don't think that they can figure out how to make this trade even if they wanted to. And also, I don't think it's going anywhere. This is just A.J. Brown's version of pitching a fit in the middle of the mall because you want a snack and your mom doesn't want to buy you one. He's just out there, man, until the Eagles give him what he wants, which is more touches. In the meantime, all the Eagles should care about is getting more wins. We're going to keep breaking down. You mentioned the Giants. The Giants get a big win in Dart's debut. What do we make? They started the Dart. What happened? We'll tell you about it next. Jaxson Dart, 13 of 20 for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns for the New York Football Giants, who take down the Chargers. What you don't see on that stat sheet is the score of 100, Caroline Fenton, and that's the juice score, because juiced up is the only way to describe the Giants. Like we all talk about, rookie quarterbacks can't play against the Chargers. Harbaugh beats them all. Well, Dart never felt overwhelmed. And in a game where, unfortunately, it looks like he may have lost Malik Nabers for the year to an ACL issue, we will see how that plays out. But even with all of that, if you're a Giants fan, you walked away with a different level of energy, because Caroline, from the outset, from the minute he walked out of the tunnel, something was palpable. I don't know if it was the chain around the neck. I don't know what it is. Something about Jaxson Dart hit different the entire time, and I just sat there thinking, God, the Giants got one. It felt good watching him play.
It did feel different. I do think that there is value in just the overall feel surrounding a team. And early in that game, I thought this team has some electricity to it. It felt like, the defibrillators, that Jaxson Dart was the defibrillator for this team that just boom, and just like breathed life into this Giants team. And I thought, okay, that's wonderful. And I think that's a huge testament to the respect that locker room has for Jaxson Dart and what he's brought to this team. But let's see you actually go out in the field and execute. And I thought Jaxson Dart had a great start. He looked great through the air. He was able to add 50 plus yards on the ground. That it felt like Jaxson Dart was the spark plug, the energy, the efficiency, and really just the competency that this Giants team needed. That it felt like through the first 3 games with Russell Wilson, that it was a really solid team with Malik Nabers, making plays, with this defense, as nasty as this defense has looked. They were just a competent quarterback away from being able to piece games together. I'm not going to say a contender, but I would say they were a competent quarterback away from piecing together wins and being able to win football games the hard way. That's what we saw from Jaxson Dart yesterday. He was able to provide that for the Giants. He didn't need to do anything absolutely crazy. He didn't need to have absolute, pop off the paper type of stats. He just needed to go out there and execute and provide energy and hope for this team. He's provided hope, I think, for this fan base since the moment he got drafted. But he provided hope and energy to this team yesterday, and beating a Chargers team that has been absolutely, no pun intended, electric all season long, I think is proof of concept.
Well, and you know me, I like to see as much as possible. So it's one game, a lot of development to do. But
it's one
in
game.
That one game,
yes.
In one game, it was like can't miss TV. It just, there was an electricity on the sideline. There was a different level of energy from Dable. I thought there was a different level of energy from the coaches as they were all slapping everybody walking by. Like, it just felt different. Now, that being said, the key moment in this game, other than the win, was obviously Malik Nabers going up for a catch, and looks like his knee didn't cooperate with him. And according to reports, they fear that it could be an ACL tear, which would take him out for the year. Caroline, of all the injuries we saw yesterday, I don't think any of those injuries was more substantial than watching Malik Nabers go down. Because now Jaxson Dart lost his cheat code. For a young quarterback that's got I could just throw up a 50-50 ball and we can go here. If you have a young quarterback, you want pieces around that can show you if that young quarterback can play. I think this is such a massive loss, because now the Giants don't have a true number one. Now it changes the way their entire offense is going to be attacked, which will change the development of Jaxson Dart, which could even change the way we perceive Brian Dable's job security. So when I think about the ripple effects from an injury, we talk about the playoffs, we talk about, losing games. But when you start to think, okay, what we saw yesterday was an improbable win for the Giants. To do that again without Malik Nabers is going to be wildly difficult. And it's going to hinder, in my mind, the ability for Jaxson to simply develop, which then changes the way we view Dable. You're talking about coaches possibly getting fired. You're talking about an entire rebuild. Like, all of these things can come from one injury. There were some big injuries yesterday. None has more consequence than Malik Nabers going down.
I hate this so much, not just because you hate to see any player go down with injury, not just because I'm a massive Malik Nabers fan, But when the Giants traded up to draft Jaxson Dart, the first thing that came out of my mouth in reaction to that pick was, man, Jaxson Dart and Malik Nabers is going to be electric. It is going to be such a fun connection to watch over the next few years. And, while I hope for the best for Malik Nabers, he is undergoing an MRI today to see the severity, but I think the fear is an ACL tear. If Jaxson Dart doesn't have Malik Nabers throughout the entirety of the rest of the season, that is a reliable pass catcher that you now lose. That's a guy that F it, Malik is out there somewhere kind of mentality that Jaxson Dart loses. That's a level of explosiveness that this offense loses. So not only do I think that can hinder the development of Jaxson Dart, I think you bring up a fair point of how does that change the way that we view Brian Daboll's job? Because I think Brian Daboll already had an incredibly thin margin for error going into this season, that Jaxson Dart felt like the life preserver that was thrown out to Brian Daboll. That was the one thing that could really save his job, that Giants fans and the Giants front office could hold on to say, okay, we are seeing development from this young quarterback and we don't want to hinder or change or stop the development by making a coaching change. How much can Giants fans and the Giants front office, maybe take Jaxson Dart's performance throughout the rest of the season with a little bit of a grain of salt, understanding that his development might be hindered a little bit, not having a certified number one receiver in Malik Nabers. I mean, yes, that puts more pressure on Wan'Dale Robinson, that puts more pressure on Darius Slayton. I think Cam Scatterbo can be another spark plug for this offense, which I love. Now, NFL fans that didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to college football last year get to watch the magic that is Cam Scatterbo because he is so fun to watch. But how does this change the narrative, not just on Jaxson Dart's development, but how does this change the narrative on Brian Daboll's job security?
I will also remind you loudly and clearly, the NFL does not give a damn about player health and safety. Cannot say it loud enough. They don't care. They'll show you that when they add extra games. They show you that in their actions, not their words. MetLife, Odell Beckham Jr., I mean this with the utmost love and respect. We take all the precautions in the world with everything else when it comes to player health and safety. Please, please, please get rid of the turf. MetLife's turf has caused more substantial knee injuries than you can count. It is ridiculous. The league is aware of it, and they do nothing about it. Every single year, we have some sort of a conversation about why this playing surface is flat out dangerous for every single player that plays on it. And the league doesn't force the Giants to do a damn thing. So the next time anybody tries to tell you that the NFL actually cares about players, let's remind ourselves that this is a fixable thing. Having real grass, it's an outdoor stadium. It is easy to have real grass. You know what's amazing? They play on real grass in Vegas and Arizona, where they have to actually have separate trays that they send out of the stadium to bring back in so that there's real grass for the players. If either the Jets or the Giants gave a damn about a single person that puts that jersey on, they would actually spend the money it takes, which isn't that substantial, to get grass. If you have billions of dollars to own an NFL team and you are too cheap to put grass in your stadium, shame on you and shame on the NFL for letting it happen every year. It's a conversation.
You see it right there. That's just over the last 4 seasons and 4 games. Then look at the number of stars, superstars that have suffered season-ending injuries on that turf. And yes, it is an NFL problem because I do think that the onus is on the league to step in whenever there is such a dire problem like this is clearly and obviously a problem that you're seeing right there. But this also falls on ownership. Why should the NFL have to step in and tell them what to do when it is so clear and so obvious what they have to do? Shouldn't the onus be on ownership when they see the Jets season in 2023 get completely derailed because of Aaron Rodgers' Achilles injury? When Malik Nabers, your bright young star, a certified superstar in the league, when he goes, knock on wood, I hope it's not for the season, but all signs point toward losing him for the season because of this ACL tear, presumably, allegedly, probably, we'll see, possibly. It's an ownership issue. Ownership should be able to observe and step in and invest in player health and safety. Because it's not just visiting players, it's now players of your own team, superstars on your own team. That's an ownership issue.
You're right. I just think the league should step in since every single player that steps on that field is at risk. I think the NFL should step in and simply ban artificial turf in any way, shape, or form from being in any practice facility or on any field that they play on moving forward. Just eliminate it altogether so that nobody is at risk. All right. We told you earlier we got a tie on Sunday night football in the Micah revenge game. We'll break it down next. We're going to bring in some expertise coming up next on Yahoo Sports Daily. RJ Ochoa is going to join us. We'll figure out how fans are feeling in Dallas after the dreaded tie. Obviously, a tie is better than a loss, but it can be argued that the main reason Dallas tied and didn't lose was because Jordan Love massively butchered the end sequence, not because the defense made some sort of stop. They're lucky to have tied. Yeah, I was puckered up on that last throw trying to figure out what in the hell Jordan Love was doing, just testing father time the way he was. We'll get some thoughts on it now. We're joined by the manager and editor-in-chief of Blog and the Boys, RJ Ochoa, back in the building. RJ, appreciate you hanging out with us. All right. So is it true? Like a tie, like kissing your sister? Like, how's Dallas feeling today about the whole tie thing?
Yeah, it's great to be with y'all. I suppose from the perspective of the Cowboys having been massive underdogs and there being a lot of toxicity, mostly self-induced around this team, they did not lose. You'll both be happy, I think, to know that the Cowboys were 0-5 against the Packers in their home building. So they technically did stop the losing streak. This is a Packers team that also won the Super Bowl in the building, so finally got one over on them. It was very weird. And I think the only reason it's frustrating is because the offense and Dak Prescott played so well that you feel like you should have won, especially with how they were able to kind of answer the call every single time down the stretch. And so it feels a little bit miserable, but yeah, obviously you would take it over a loss any day of the week.
I'm going to ask you to do something very scary, and I'm going to ask you to step into the mind of one Jerry Jones. Because I think that Cowboys fans can say, okay, like, at least it wasn't a loss. You don't feel great, but like, okay, it's a tie, I guess. I can only understand that Jerry Jones, whenever he was going through negotiations with Micah Parsons and ultimately decided to trade Micah Parsons, he circled this one on his calendar to be able to get one over on Micah Parsons. How do you think he feels this morning?
Yeah, I think, look, from a theatrical standpoint, this was like the perfect game to end in a tie. I mean, in terms of all possible Dallas Cowboys, games that they've played under Jerry Jones, it's been that awkward. And to your point, it's been that coming down the stretch. Micah technically had the game-saving tackle on Dak Prescott. I believe he was credited with a sack on it. And so in that sense, you could say he saved his new team. That's part of what made this, or I think makes this a weird game to look back on, because I think we all thought that this was going to be Micah triple sack night, that it was going to be WWE like in each and every single facet. So I think ultimately fans' perspective from my purview is a level of gratitude that this is over, because you're right. I mean, it had been literally a month anniversary of the trade. And so for it to finally be taken care of one way or another, this happens to be a very weird way, is a little bit peaceful, because now everybody can finally and officially go their separate ways.
So, RJ, last night just felt like the personification of what we've seen so far. Dak and the offense was great and the defense sucked. If that's the case for the entire season, where do the Cowboys end up?
I think, I know I personally have waged a lot of wars on the internet in the name of Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. And I think that we've reached a place as it's kind of a collective society where we're all able and for the most part willing to acknowledge that Dak Prescott's playing wonderfully, that Tony Romo was an underrated player. And so to answer that question, I think it puts Dak Prescott in Tony Romo's shoes. I mean, it's great Shakespearean tragedy what's happening to Dak, and that he is fully living out the career that Tony had before him. And he's going to have to, I mean, look, last night, I think we all think that Dak was, that was maybe one of the best quarterback games that has happened so far in the NFL. Put it in your top, whatever, 3 or 5 or 10. And they tied, right? Like, it was barely good enough. It took the hair on the chinny chin of Dak Prescott, and I would add Brian Schottenheimer from an offensive play calling standpoint, to just tie. So what does it take to win? I mean, truly, totally. The Cowboys didn't force a punt in the entire second half or overtime, obviously. And so you're asking this man to carry you fully and totally in each and every single way, and that may be enough, but it probably won't be based on literally all evidence.
It's so frustrating to me just watching certain performances get wasted. And I know that is everyone in Dallas is nodding in agreement with me to see a performance like that from Dak Prescott get kind of wasted, it feels like, on a bad defensive performance. What is there to change at this point? To stop the great offensive performances from getting wasted, to put yourself firmly into a playoff conversation, to turn this season around and to make these so-so stories into positive stories, into success stories. What changes are there to be made, do you think, for the Cowboys defensively from now until the trade deadline?
Yeah, this feels like when, you go for a run and you're 2 miles out or whatever, and you just regret it, but you're out, right? Like you've got to head back. And that's where the Cowboys are. Like you can't, fix this in October, which we're about to be in, obviously. And the Micah thing takes up the real estate of this discussion, and it's difficult for people to kind of get past that in terms of a conversation. But what we're seeing is the attrition of not building your roster from a functional standpoint in the NFL. It isn't just about the long-term extensions that the Cowboys have dragged out, Dak Prescott included, CeeDee Lamb included, I'm sure in the future George Pickens. But this is dragging those things out and wasting opportunities, wasting avenues of proper roster construction to give yourself depth. Because do the Cowboys win this game if Micah's on their team? I don't know. And that isn't a slight or any kind of shade towards Micah. It's just a matter of the cupboard truly is that bare. And we acknowledge that, or we believe that they're a great drafting team. And so we think, oh, well, they've got, multiple first-round draft picks over the course of the next couple of years. And so that's going to be what fixes this. That may happen, but hitting in the draft is a very difficult proposition. And they've had their fair share of misses. And so right now, you really can't do anything. I mean, they brought in Jadeveon Clowney 2 weeks ago, and that, I suppose, helped on Sunday night. But they're up in the air. The plane is flying, and they really can't build it anymore at this point from 30,000 feet up.
Yeah, let me be a contrarian then for a second, RJ, because we keep talking about Micah. This defense sucks. This defense would still suck with Micah. Like, they just have a good pass rusher coming after it, but I don't think Micah fixes the entire defense, right? So as much as we're talking about how bad it is, I think maybe there's this fool's gold thing happening right now. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it just feels like we're blowing this up. Like, if Micah were there, it wouldn't be that. I think this defense is so unfixably bad that Micah wouldn't have made a difference.
I agree with that. And it's worth mentioning that it's their third year with as many defensive coordinators. Mike Zimmer last year and Dan Quinn, obviously, the year prior before he left to become the Washington head coach. But beyond Micah's absence, DeMarvion Overshown is technically missing. Deron Bland is not at full health. Trayvon Diggs has not been at full health. Savon Ravel, their third round draft pick, has yet to make his debut for the team. And so you really do have just kind of the shell of last year and a few pieces that you added in free agency, like Jack Sanborn, who had, I think, one of his worst games for the team on Sunday night. So, yeah, they're extremely and extraordinarily limited. And I would offer that in that kind of situation, you have to rely on coaching. And I've been a big fan and a big proponent of Matt Eberflus. He had a great career with the Cowboys before he became a defensive coordinator for the first time, but it just isn't hitting. It just isn't translating. And in the man's defense, he did have his star player traded away a week before the season began. But at a certain point, all those excuses kind of run out or fall on deaf ears. And so this is a group that, has an occasional moment. Yeah, they generated the fumble late in the first half, and that was important. That was seismic. That was part of, obviously, the overall point structure that led to the tie. But they do not have the horses on defense. They do not have the coaching on defense. So they're just kind of out there existing and aging and hoping that Dak Prescott can save them when he's on the field.
You bring up coaching, and I go back to the day that Brian Schottenheimer was hired as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. It was widely perceived as a pretty unsexy hire, but through 4 games, what is the local impression of Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach?
I think that right now Dak has the highest approval rating in people's books, and I think that Brian probably has the second. You're right. It was toxic, the manner in which they moved on from Mike McCarthy and then ultimately brought in Brian Schottenheimer. They didn't even allow themselves the opportunity to interview Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn, and they just faced the former and going to play the latter next week. And so I think everybody hoped or had this blind hope that maybe they did stumble upon a diamond in the rough. And 4 games in, an incredibly small sample size, it does seem like that is the case. I think he had an incredible offensive night, certainly calling the game. And he seems to understand Dak Prescott on a very deep and intimate level. And they're working in perfect harmony that way. But beyond that, I don't celebrate when someone is benched or there's some sort of discipline, but Trayvon Diggs was benched prior to this game, and he's someone who's been a stalwart of this franchise, who's been a cornerstone of their defense for a long time. But we talk about football cliches and lame things and that feel like coach speak, but in Brian's defense, he has said that you have to earn playing time and things like that. And so he is one of the first head coaches in my experience in Dallas Cowboys, modern franchise history to be a man of his word in that sense and to overcome ownership stepping in and wanting the players who they've given second or third contracts to play on the field. So that felt like a victory for him. And I think he's doing the right things, but he's in a bit of a Kobayashi Maru in a lot of senses.
You mentioned it felt like a victory. What would success be for this year's Cowboys team to the fan base?
Man, last night was the first time the Packers visited the stadium since the 2023 wildcard round, and that loss fractured the fan base in a very different way. Dez caught it, and Aaron Rodgers on 3rd and 20. Fine, there have been a lot of heartbreakers, but that one was different. That one really kind of felt like, you know what, Lucy, I don't care if you're lining it up again. I don't have the energy to step in and swing here. And so I think people have lowered their expectations. I think people have really adopted the belief that this is an ownership group, a leadership group that seems to care more about being an entertainment product than a functional and successful winning football team. And I think last night in some senses was representative of that. I mean, the pregame felt like a WWE, setup with Micah and whatnot, and NBC certainly got their money's worth with all of it. So I think that people feel trapped and imprisoned and like, if you stumble into the Super Bowl, that will be great. And I will scream along, the entire journey. But I think people really don't expect much of this team. And so in that sense, success would be, making the playoffs, because I mean, what more can you do to this fan base? Like, the Eagles are going to win another Super Bowl and prove to be like the greatest modern team. They're going to destroy what we thought was the greatest modern franchise in NFL history. Like, this team has been, hurt and cut and twisted and pulled in each and every single way that at this point it's like, oh no, we're going to lead another national talk show with a bunch of different memes and jokes.
It does feel like last night's result is the ultimate microcosm of how the fan base is feeling. That a tie is the ultimate feeling stuck, one step forward and one step back. But if you look at the grand scheme of the NFC, where would you put the Cowboys in your NFC rankings today?
Man, I think Philadelphia obviously clears everyone at the moment. I think even though Tampa lost, I've got to put them up there. The Rams, you certainly can't count out. The Niners look, despite yesterday, trustworthy. Seattle looks great, right? Like it's incredibly early, but I think that at the end of the day, the Cowboys have, I don't know where each of you would put Dak in your overall quarterback rankings, but they have someone who's playing the position at a top 5 approximately level. They have a head coach who's leaning into his strengths, who's aggressive in the proper ways. They, when CeeDee Lamb is back, have one of the best and most potent pass catching duos in the NFL. And so that's enough. I mean, that's not, I wouldn't build a team that way, but that is enough, right, to contend and to compete and maybe pull a rabbit out of your hat at some point down the road. So I think that they are a fringe playoff team right now, but that is because of the sum of their parts, not because of the individuals. You're right that last night was a microcosm of how people are feeling, and it's because it was so unsatisfactory. You feel like you have these incredible tools and these incredible variables to build something strong. You have the foundational pieces, but everything on top of them just withers away. This isn't even the house that the little piggy built out of twigs. Like, it's the house that the little piggy built out of straw, and just one huff and puff blows it all down.
One more before we let you go here, RJ. That man right there, George Pickens, with a gorgeous ballerina type of catch last night, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. When the Cowboys initially acquired George Pickens, it wasn't all that, impressive of a move, in my opinion. But I have been so pleasantly surprised from what I've seen from George Pickens with CeeDee Lamb on the field or not. What has been a bigger surprise to you? What George Pickens has added to this pass catching group, or how leaky the secondary has been?
I think that the secondary always had, real boom or bust potential. It was always going to be one end of the spectrum because of injuries and whether or not Kyrie Elam was going to hit. He was a former first-round player, obviously, who the Cowboys traded for, and whether or not Savon Ravel was going to be healthy to start the season. And so they've drawn the short straw on those things. And so that was predictable, but and while Georgia's success was predictable, I don't know that it was so predictable like this. Last night was really impressive in that CeeDee Lamb is gone. And so it's a matter of, he has to be the star. He has to be the alpha. It's so obvious. Everybody fully and totally knows it. And he managed to succeed and to thrive. Where I would offer, I guess, the George Pickens thing was incredibly predictable, is that the Cowboys traded for him in a contract year. And so, of course, he would have this incredible showing and lead to, another set of negotiations that are going to last way longer than they have to in the offseason. I was against the trade initially myself, just because I didn't trust them to handle it. But I said then, if you're going to do this, give him the deal now so that you don't wind up in a situation where he obtains more leverage over you. And if he plays like this, particularly when CeeDee Lamb is out, he's only going to amplify the negotiating power that he has. And that truly and totally is the Dallas Cowboys way.
All right, you guys can read him on Blogging the Boys. RJ, really appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning after the tie. Hopefully next time we'll get you after a win, but we appreciate you hanging out with us after the tie.
Thanks for having me, guys. You have a great week.
That's great stuff. Look, Caroline, there is this moment here where I think we have to remember, too, that while the AFC has a lot of bad teams, the NFC's got a lot of good ones. The entire NFC West right now has a better record than the Dallas Cowboys. So they are running quickly out of time to keep themselves in the playoff conversation in the NFC with games like last night.
And we asked, I think it was a very good and very fair question that I've been wondering myself of what is success for this team. I think making the playoffs in this NFC after you trade away your star defensive player and were the absolute laughingstock of the NFL a week before the season started, I would say that making the playoffs would be a success. But it just feels like whatever outcome, short of winning a game in the playoffs and getting to the divisional round, maybe getting bounced by the eventual Super Bowl champion, the Philadelphia Eagles, will just feel so unsatisfying. Missing the playoffs would feel unsatisfying. Losing a wild card game would kind of feel a little unsatisfying. That this franchise just feels like stuck in the mucky middle. That you have one elite side or close to elite side and one horrific side. That you take one step back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That they just feel so stuck.
They do, and no matter where it ends, we'll just yell about the fact that they haven't won a Super Bowl in so long. That's what happens with the Cowboys. All right, we may not have a lot of respect for the Cowboys right now, depending on what happens, but we need to start putting some respect out there for some people that had a big Sunday. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily, hour number 2. We are flying on a Monday morning. A ton to get to. Got some respect to get out this hour. A lot of reaction from a wild day of Sunday NFL football. But Caroline, let's start this like we start every hour. 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
News updates.
You know, Fitzy, I think that we can appreciate honesty as a trait in anybody. And I do appreciate Cam Ward's honesty yesterday. So we heard from Cam Ward after the Titans got destroyed 26-0 at the hands of the Houston Texans. Cam Ward spoke with the media and said, quote, "If we keep it a buck right now, we ass." Yeah, don't mince any words about that, Cam Ward, because you know what? Yeah, you're right. The Titans are ass. They are terrible. They are 0-4. Like I said, they lost 26-0 to the Texans yesterday. So far, this team has been outscored 120-51. They have been outgained 1,474 yards to a measly 842. They've been outgained 5.9 yards per play to 3.6. They are, let me pull up my notes here, 32nd in yards per game. That's worst in the NFL for those at home keeping score. 32nd in pass yards per game. 29th in rush yards per game. There you go. 32nd in points per game, and 3 of their 4 losses on the season have come by at least double digits. Cam Ward isn't just trying to make headlines or throw out, a funny meme. Cam Ward is telling the truth. The Titans are absolutely terrible. And I do have to give credit to Cam Ward that at least somebody in that building is calling it like it is. At least somebody in that building is holding that locker room accountable. Because Brian Callahan said before giving up play calling duties that he had no regrets about some of the plays that he called or the job that he has done so far this season. Really? You don't have a single regret when your team was 0-3 at that point? Now the Titans sit at 0-4. And I don't think the question is, how can things get better for the Titans? Because I don't think it can. That roster is not good enough. Coaching staff is clearly not good enough. And ownership does not support a healthy environment for winning. The question, I think, the more dire question, the more important question that is surrounding this team is how can they get out from before they ruin Cam Ward? I don't think they've ruined Cam Ward yet, but if the Titans go along the same trajectory, Cam Ward, who is the lone bright spot, the lone source of hope and optimism for this fan base, will get ruined by the Tennessee Titans.
Drafting a quarterback first overall is supposed to bring you hope that lasts at least a season. Hasn't even lasted a month in Tennessee, so hopefully they get it figured out. I'll get you the first point in my mind. Speaking of getting things figured out, and maybe a lack of hope, at least in my house on Sundays, my beloved Raiders lost to the Chicago Bears yesterday, 25-24. But in that process, fantasy football fans everywhere can rejoice because Ashton Jeanty was finally unlocked. Now, bad teams find a way to lose. That is an adage that I was told many years ago that seems to be true sometimes. But even in a loss, when you look at what Ashton Jeanty did, 21 carries for 138 yards and a touchdown, also added 2 catches for 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns for Ashton on a night where the Raiders rushed for 240 yards as a team and lost. That's what happens when you have 4 turnovers over the course of the game. That's what happens when your running back has more yards rushing than your quarterback has passing in the modern NFL, which seems difficult to do. But yeah, somehow Geno only put up 117 yards. The real question is this sustainable? And that's the hardest thing for all of us to figure out for most teams right now that are sitting in that 2-2, 1-3 range. We're trying to make sweeping statements about what we see that will last. What we know is that a week ago, the Raiders' offensive line looked absolutely abysmal. What we know is that this week against the Bears, it looked really good. And Ashton Jeanty looked really good. And it's a reminder, as I keep screaming every single week about rookies, it takes more than 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It is going to take the season to figure out how many of these rookies can be truly special. But what we did see, at least for 1 week, one Sunday against the Bears, was an Ashton Jeanty that had returned to his college stance of standing upright. And in that process, looked as explosive as he did at college. When he actually wasn't getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, he had the opportunity to make big plays, and he did it over and over and over again, at least for a week. As much as my favorite football team might not be any good this year, at least for a week, we can all calm down on the overreactions of trying to bury a rookie 3 weeks into their season. At least for a week, Ashton Jeanty looks like he might be the star that everybody hoped he would be, and at least for a week, your fantasy football teams have a little bit of hope that Ashton Jeanty has gotten it figured out. We'll see if that continues, though, because the schedule doesn't get easier for the Raiders. It gets tougher, and that could mean tough times ahead for Ashton. Let's get to our top point. Speaking of putting a little respect out there, it is time for us to put some respect out there for some of the people, players, teams, some of the football we saw over the course of the weekend that just deserves a little acknowledgement. Are we putting some respect on their name after what we saw in week 4 for, I don't know, the Pittsburgh Steelers? The Pittsburgh Steelers go over to Dublin. They take care of the Vikings because Carson Wentz over and over and over again. But they get a big win. And now all of a sudden we're sitting there like, Steelers are 3-1. Should we be putting some respect on their name?
I think so. I think we should be putting respect on the Steelers' name, and this is coming from somebody who has been absolutely thrashing the Steelers. Really going back to this past offseason, all those changes they made defensively, it felt like they just replaced aging and expensive players with more aging and expensive players. That everything the Steelers did this past offseason felt so un-Steeler. That some of the way that they've looked throughout the season, I was like, I'm not buying into that. But I think I'm starting to buy more and more into the Pittsburgh Steelers because the AFC North feels winnable. After the pooping of the pants that the Ravens did yesterday in Arrowhead, I have to believe that this division can be wide open. I still think the Ravens are a better football team, but right now the Steelers are in first place in the division. The Ravens look brutal, and looking at the Steelers' schedule upcoming, they play the Browns. They have a bye, and then the Browns, that's a game that they should win. And then they go to a Joe Burrow-less Bengals team. There is a very, there's a possibility at least that the Steelers could be 5-1 going into week 8 against the Green Bay Packers. I'm buying into this Steelers team, Fitz, and it has everything to do with the Ravens and the division feeling way more wide open than I ever would have anticipated since the season started.
Two things can be true. You are correct. The division is wildly different. And I will admit that this year when I said I thought the Steelers would win 8 games and have their first losing season, that was under the presumption that Baltimore wouldn't suck, which seems to be weird. And it was also under the presumption that Joe Burrow would play enough that the Bengals would probably split with Pittsburgh. That's no longer the case. But I will remain consistent since April. This schedule was going to give us a hot start for the Steelers, and then we'll find out a little bit of truth about this football team. You're right. They get the Browns and the Bengals. But as you mentioned, then they get the Packers. In fact, they get the Packers, the Colts, the Chargers. They still have the Bills left. They still have the Ravens twice. They still, who I think will get things right, they still have the Lions left on the schedule. There are a lot of football games left on this schedule that are going to be difficult for the Steelers. They're 3-1, though. So, yeah, I guess we have to put respect on the fact that they're 3-1 and the rest of the division sucks. I'm just not willing to put respect on the Steelers at this point because what do you want? Steelers fans are the ones that are in my mentions every single week telling me that unless Mike Tomlin wins playoff games, that I'm not buying it. Well, all right, we've seen the Steelers beat some bad football teams. Huzzah. Congratulations. Mazel tov. That doesn't mean anything when we actually get against decent football teams. I know the Steelers are winning games. I just don't know if Pittsburgh is actually really any good yet. I'm still in the wait and see. I'm in the wait and see range. Where are you on the New England Patriots, who just went in this weekend and absolutely shut, like the Patriots did to the Carolina Panthers, what we expect, Alabama to do to National Auto Diesel College when they play their cupcakes. Like, it was a cupcake murder by the Patriots. They went in there and they just killed the Panthers. So is it time to put some respect on the Patriots then?
Yeah, talk about the ultimate whiplash that's happening in Carolina. Last week, you destroy the Falcons 30-0, then you get your butts whooped by 30 points this week. I mean, my goodness, you're hot, then you're cold, you're yes, then you're no, you're in, then you're out. I'll stop there. There it is. No, is that not fair of me? Is it not fair of me to come here, 12 hours and some change after removed from destroying a team by 30 points to say that I don't really respect the New England Patriots that much, because this is still a New England Patriots team that has turned the ball over, that has committed dumb penalties, that has played so far outside of the quote-unquote Mike Vrabel cultural way that one game and one massive win, and albeit as good as Drake May looked in that win, It was against the crummy, crappy Carolina Panthers. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nobody here even cares about the Carolina Panthers. So I can't put too much stake into, albeit a win that they looked very good, but it was against a bad team. So I'm not quite going all in on the respect train for the New England Patriots. And part of that too is I think that, the division's done. It's won. It's the Bills division. I don't see much of a path there for the Patriots to make the postseason.
That's why coming in, I thought the Patriots would be a 6 or 7 win team that looks better, and that's who I think the Patriots are. Like, let's be honest right now. The Panthers should send flowers to the Titans because we're not talking enough about how bad the Panthers look most Sundays because the Titans are out here being the worst team in football, because the Saints are out here being terrible. Like, there are a handful of teams in the NFL that are just garbage. They are just, it's tough football to watch. And the Carolina Panthers are one of them. I would love to be wrong. Caroline, you say it all the time. I'm going to start saying it. Prove me wrong. Carolina, I would love for you to prove me wrong. But the fact is, I believe that at the end of the year, Dave Canales will be out of a job and Bryce Young will no longer be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I believe that the Carolina Panthers are a 3 or 4 win football team. So, yeah, the Patriots at home went out there and beat up on a football team that, frankly, I think won last week because the Falcons forgot they had to show up for a football game. It's the only way I can make it make sense. You got trap gamed, and that's the only way it happened. So, am I giving any big credit to the Patriots for this? Hell no. Like, remember that the Patriots were the one, organizationally and through the media, that told us all summer that this was going to be a playoff team this year. Vegas is the ones that told us they were favorites in, depending on the book, 10 or 11 games. So am I suddenly putting playoff respect on the name of the Patriots because they beat the hell out of the Panthers? No, what I'm doing is wishing that the schedule gods would give my favorite team the opportunity to play the Panthers every week because it's an easy win. All right, the person that did not have an easy time with the Panthers was Michael Penix Jr. He comes back, and he has a monster game for Atlanta. We were curious, would he get benched? What's it going to look like? Short leash, all of these things. He has a monster game for Atlanta. Looks really good. Falcons get a win. Are we putting some respect on Michael Penix Jr.'s name at this point with that 7-point win over the Commanders?
Yeah, I think that we should. I think that at this point in Michael Penix and his development, that we'll take any of the good and we'll give credit to the good and dissect the bad, and we'll kind of take everything week by week and game by game, even, snap by snap, possession by possession. I don't think that we need to expect absolute fireworks from Michael Penix Jr. where he is at in his development right now. So yes, credit to Michael Penix, but also credit to that entire coaching staff for being able to get this out of Michael Penix week over week. It feels like he's getting better and better. And of course, quarterback development is not linear, and that's not what we've seen from Michael Penix, but you'll take the good as it comes. Credit to that run game that looked pretty solid. Bijan Robinson, 75 yards yesterday, 4.5 yards a crack. That'll get it done every single time. I'll give credit to that defense. I'll give credit, just to Atlanta all the way around. Michael Penix deserves a slice of that credit pie, but it's not just about Michael Penix at this point. That win yesterday was not a Michael Penix type of win. I will say credit is deserved to everyone in Atlanta.
I will die on the hill that being able to refocus as a young quarterback is one of the most difficult things you can do when there's any noise. And I think there was a little bit of noise last week. And so I give Michael Penix Jr. a ton of credit for being able to just turn around and really put himself in the situation where he can have that laser focus, that locked in game and play that well. So I'm actually all in on this because I think I've been pretty tough on Penix in the sense that I'm waiting to see more. The games like Sunday are the games that give everybody hope that he can turn out to be a superstar in this league. I mean, he looked so good. And to do that after a week where you looked so bad, I put some emphasis in that. I put a little bit, especially because, look, this is a week where, again, we get the standings every week. We're trying to figure this out, who's actually good and who's actually bad. And, the Buccaneers have won 3 games by the hair of their chinny chin, and then they turn around and they lose yesterday. So now the Falcons find themselves at 2-2. 1 game back at Tampa Bay in the AFC South. The Falcons find themselves with an opportunity to really make a move right now. And in order to do that, I have to think about the chaos that could have happened if Penix had a bad game yesterday. If Penix is terrible yesterday, now we're talking about Kirk. Now we're talking about, do we need a rotation? Now we're talking about, do you need to bench him for a little bit, get him off the field like they did with Bryce? Like, we're talking about all of these other things simply if Penix doesn't come in. And instead of even just being mid, he came in and had, I think, his best game as a pro by far. And Drake London was unlocked for the game. Like, those are the moments that have to drive Falcons fans crazy, though, Caroline, because you see the best of Atlanta and you see the worst of Atlanta all at once. All right, let's get one more in here. So I'm gonna just fall on the sword. There's one team that I've changed my mind about, that I will go to the mountaintop and say, you were right, I was wrong, I'm sorry. And I'm saying that loudly to Jacksonville Jaguars fans. I watched the Jags against the 49ers, and I know the 49ers have injuries issues, but Brock Purdy was back in this game. I watched the Jags be the team that we think the 49ers are. That defense was absolutely swarming, and their ability to take away the football this year is electric. And I know that I'm the one that's been sitting back there saying, I'll believe it when I see it for the Jags. They've beat some bad football teams so far this year, and we don't know yet if the 49ers are great. I just know that from the eye test, the Jags looked like they belonged in a far different conversation. Like, they dominated most of that game against San Francisco, let them back in a little bit at the end. But Caroline, that Jags defense has absolutely just been disruptive. And we fall in love with teams with a really good defense. I think it might be time to change the tone of our conversation around Jacksonville.
I agree. I love it when we disagree, and I always think that's fun. But I think that poking a hole in the Jags defense isn't necessarily fair. They've had at least 3 turnovers in all 4 of their games. So far in the season,
Crazy.
the Jags have 13 total turnovers in 4 games. They had 9 all last year. Through 4 games, the Jags have 4 more turnovers than they did in the entirety of last season. I think that is so impressive, and I will give so much credit to that coaching staff. Devin Lloyd with 2 interceptions yesterday. I mean, the Jags defense just last year was a liability for that team. This year, it's how the Jags are not just staying in games, it's how the Jags are winning games. Now, I think that some Jags games so far this season have been a little drunk. Like a Trevor Lawrence interception gets called back for DPI yesterday, and just several moments in that game, several moments in Jags games so far throughout this season have just felt like funky and weird and odd. And sometimes the ball just bounces your way and the ball doesn't bounce your way. Sometimes that's what happens when you have a very odd shaped ball. Weird things happen, but the weird wins count just the same as the dominant ones. And in AFC South, that feels honestly more competitive and way deeper than I thought it would. I mean, the Titans stink, but the Colts look great. The Jags are winning games. Like, this can be very much so a Jags team that makes the postseason if they continue to win games, if they continue to get takeaways, and if the defense continues to play at the level that they're playing at. So, we'll see what the rest of the season looks like for the Jags, but just alone, the defensive upgrades that they've made through 4 weeks deserves recognition and deserves our respect.
Yeah, there's still a long way to go before I buy in on where we thought Trevor Lawrence would be, and their offense has some problems with it. We'll get a better idea of who the Jags are this week because they have Monday Night Football taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. So they are at home on Monday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. That is a national audience and a national of a Chiefs team that has been awakened. So let's see what this defense can do when they're taking on a Kansas City team that feels like they are ripe and ready for that next step. We'll see. But again, one thing we'll be consistent on in this show, and I think we've both been consistent on in our entire careers. We'll admit when we're wrong, when the mindset's changing a little bit, when we get new evidence, we'll figure out what it means. We got new evidence yesterday about one team coming up next. The Lions absolutely went in and told all of us that the worrying in week 1 was insane. So the question is, what do we make of Detroit now? We'll figure it out next. Is it time to replace Joe Flacco with Dylan Gabriel? That is the question that was being asked because the Lions went in and just roared all over Cleveland by way of a 34-10 shellacking. And this game just was not even close. And in fact, Joe in this one, pretty terrible. 184 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel made his way into the game late. And so that had Twitter just sort of ablaze. There was a confluence of events that happened yesterday as we looked at the quarterback situations around the league and trying to figure out, should the Browns make a change? But Caroline, I keep looking at this and saying it's not going to happen. And Browns fans will yell at me as Browns fans have been yelling at me since June. So all I would say to Browns fans is I was right in June, and I've been right so far. So, at some point, maybe you guys are all looking with too much heart and not enough logic. Because the fact is, this game was out of control. This game was a slaughter. And it was clear early on that Joe Flacco was not playing particularly well. And what did the Browns do about it? Nothing. Even when the game was a blowout, did Dylan Gabriel, I'll learn to speak, find a way into this game in the third quarter? No. When this game was out of hand, did he find his way in? No. At the very end with some mop-up duty, he was 0 for 1. 0 for 1. So even when the Browns had an opportunity to just get some reps for their young quarterback, they didn't do it. Why? Because the organization, whether fans like this or not, the organization obviously doesn't believe he's ready. The organization obviously believes that Joe Flacco, as bad as it was yesterday, is better than what Dylan Gabriel has to offer them. And they showed you that because even when there was mop-up duty to be had, what did they do? Nothing. So if you think there's a massive quarterback change coming, I will just tell you, as I've been telling you since June, you're wrong. Nothing is going to happen here, Caroline.
If something hasn't happened yet, you have to ask the question, when will it? When will it get so bad that you feel like you have to make a change? I would say we're at that point. So to your point, why haven't we seen a change? I think it can be for a few reasons. One, Dylan Gabriel nor Shedeur Sanders are ready. And they don't want to put a young rookie quarterback out there before they're ready. But I also say, could it get worse? I understand Joe Flacco is a veteran in this league, that he has seen a lot of football and he has won a lot of football games. I don't have a whole lot of hope that Joe Flacco can suddenly turn what we've seen from him around into playing consistent winning football. That's not to say that Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders will play consistent winning football, but you at least start to get answers about what these young quarterbacks are or what they can be. I'll ask the same question today that I've asked about the Cleveland Browns since the draft. What's your path to your franchise quarterback? What is your quarterback plan? I'm not talking about your development plan, but your plan to finding your franchise quarterback. Because maybe it is Dylan Gabriel. Maybe it is Shedeur Sanders. If they haven't shown you enough in practice to come in relief of a stinky Joe Flacco, well then, when are you going to start to see enough from them to at least get some game reps? And if they're not getting game reps, how can you feel confident that they are or are not your future? And if the Browns are probably going to have a top 3, top 5 pick in this upcoming draft, don't you have to know what you're going to spend that pick on, what your needs are, what your plan is to crawl out of the hole of the laughing stock of the NFL that you're currently in, and frankly have been for quite some time?
I guess my argument to that is maybe they're seeing everything they need to know in practice. Like, if none of these guys separate, if none of these guys can become what Jaxson Dart has been for the Giants, like even on the broadcast, what did we hear? Last week, before Jaxson Dart got in the game, we heard, oh, man, you can feel the energy around the building. It's palpable. They know they got a dude. Now, Jaxson Dart was at the end of the first round. I get that that's the difference. But if you don't have that vibe and energy about these guys, you might already know that they're not the answer. You might already be looking at it saying, hey, like I asked the world, if Sam Darnold was struggling in Seattle, would we be screaming and yelling every week for Jalen Milroe to get in the football game? I don't think so. Jalen Milroe was also a third-round quarterback. In fact, this all comes back to Shedeur. I honestly believe if Shedeur wasn't drafted in the 5th round, we wouldn't even be talking about Dillon Gabriel. But everybody's so desperate to get to Shedeur that Dillon Gabriel is almost collateral damage. Got to get him in. Got him in. I don't remember ever hearing a 3rd-round draft pick at the quarterback position get this level of why is he not playing outrage every single week. People didn't do that with Hendon Hooker, also drafted in the 3rd round. People didn't even do that with when Desmond Ridder got the starting job. It was like, huh, really? Desmond Ridder? 3rd-round quarterback. And if you look at Shedeur, I pulled up the list of 5th-round quarterbacks that were drafted in the last 10 years. Was anyone sitting here begging for Davis Webb or Mike White or Easton Stick or Clayton Thornton or Ian Book or Bailey Zappi, who did get in for a little while and it was a disaster? Was anyone
that is a
those
who's
guys?
who.
Like
wow, that's a doozy of a list.
Those are the quarterbacks that are drafted in the 5th round. Like Shedeur went in the 5th round for a reason. Dillon Gabriel went in the 3rd round for a reason. Neither of them are likely, even if they are excelling, even if they're ahead of schedule, the odds say the chances that either of them becomes a sustainable starting quarterback in the NFL is almost zero. If the Browns end up with a top 5 pick next year, they should take a quarterback, no matter what they got this year, because statistically, the chances that your 3rd or 5th round quarterback becomes a long-term, high-level starting quarterback is almost zero. The real answer is the Browns don't have a plan at quarterback because there wasn't one to be had. Flacco was just to get him off the heap. There was no real other option. And then they took a couple stab in the darks, throw spaghetti against the wall picks in the draft to see what happens. You don't throw your season away based on that plan.
There's also proof of concept that you can adjust at the quarterback position. If you whiff, you can overcome that if you are just smart. I look at the 49ers. I think about, what if Brock Purdy, never came to fruition? Or what if Brock Purdy was not a San Francisco 49er? How many people in San Francisco would have been fired for selling the farm to trade up to get Trey Lance? Because Trey Lance is a backup at best in this league right now. But Brock Purdy was kind of the life preserver that, that saved everybody's jobs. Well, that is probably the exception more than it is the rule when you get Mr. Irrelevant becoming your franchise quarterback. That is still proof of concept that if you are smart, if you draft smart, if you have good coaches, if you draft well and put players in position to help that young quarterback succeed, you can figure it out. I think Denver is another great example of that. That Denver sells the farm and pays Russell Wilson all that money, and then pays Russell Wilson all that money to go away. Well, they bring in Sean Payton, who believed in Bo Nix, and Bo Nix was kind of the answer, that they could pay a rookie quarterback salary to make Russell Wilson's cap hit not hurt as bad. And Bo Nix, feels like he hasn't been great all throughout this entire season, but he at least feel okay about Bo Nix moving forward. That there is proof of concept that when you have smart coaches and smart decision makers, you can bail yourself out of making stupid boneheaded decisions. Guaranteeing Deshaun Watson all of that money was a stupid boneheaded decision. But it doesn't feel like the Browns have smart enough decision makers to bail themselves out of that mistake. Because right now, I don't see very many opportunities, whether it's Joe Flacco or Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, and the lack thereof that we have seen from Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders doesn't give me a whole lot of optimism that the Browns have the answer currently in-house, nor do I have optimism that the Browns have an answer at some point, whether it's in the draft or in free agency or whatever it might be.
Maybe it just comes back to what RJ Ochoa said earlier when we asked, how do you fix the Cowboys defense at this point? And he said, you're 2 miles into the race and you got to get back. There's nothing you can do. Like your defense is what it is. You don't fix your defense in October. I don't believe that the Cleveland Browns will fix their quarterback situation in October or November or December. Like, I think the reality
what about April?
For the Cleveland Browns.
Do you feel like you can fix it in April?
I think that there's going to be a lot of teams desperate to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. And I think this year in college football that you and I love covering, we've seen that there aren't that many quarterbacks that are right now today perceived the way that they were perceived 3 weeks ago. So I like, True. This is the hardest truth I continually say to football fans. You are desperate to have the next Patrick Mahomes, and the next Patrick Mahomes usually isn't there for you. It's a stinky message to use my favorite ism today. It's a stinky message to give, but like sometimes you're just screwed at certain positions. Sometimes you have a need and you know you need to get better, and they're just, whether it's because of the free agency class, the draft, or where you're picking, sometimes you have a need and there's just not a damn thing you can do about it. And football fans, we all do this. We all forget that that's a big part of the process. Also, the Lions beat them 34-10. God only knows how bad they would have beat them if the quarterback play was even worse. When you say it can't get any worse, just remember
it always
can always get worse. Kudos to the Lions. We'll give the Lions some love over the course of the week because they deserve some love.
They deserve love.
But, the Lions deserve love. The Lions, stick around for the power rankings this week. The Lions are going to get some love. But in the meantime, we got to give some love to a massive weekend in the WNBA. There is controversy. There's coaches getting suspended. And maybe they're all right. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. And it was a massive weekend in the WNBA as we had two series that looked like they were coming down to the wire. I will give a quick shout out. The Las Vegas Aces obviously are going into Game 5. So that's something that Caroline will be taking a look at because Indiana, man, absolutely just when you thought they were left for dead, you said it. You said that the Fever were going to have a good opportunity at home. They certainly did in Game 4. They've now forced a Game 5 that will come back to Vegas. This is going to be absolutely electric.
This back and forth has been so, honestly, this entire, WNBA semifinals have been so fun and so back and forth and chippy. The thing with the Aces, whenever they took Game 2 and really limited what Kelsey Mitchell was able to do, I said they now have the blueprint. Something that was so difficult for so many teams, whether it was in the regular season or in the postseason, to limit Kelsey Mitchell's impact. The Aces and that lights out defense found a way to do it. And I thought ultimately that would be the difference. Now, the Aces were able to take Game 3, but in Game 4, not only was Kelsey Mitchell able to get hers with 25 points, we also saw the added razzle-dazzle with Aaliyah Boston. We haven't seen Aaliyah Boston be a massive impact, at least offensively, really throughout the entirety of this postseason. Yes, her presence has been one that you have to pay attention to, but Aaliyah Boston wasn't able to break through, at least on the box score, until she was last night. Aaliyah Boston had 24 points. That's her largest point total going back to like mid-August. So not only is Kelsey Mitchell able to get hers, not only is Odyssey Sims able to get hers with 18 points last night, with the addition of Aaliyah Boston, I mean, those three having, double-digit scores, two of them in the 20s, That's not something that I think very many teams are able to do against that Aces defense. The Aces have the best defense in the WNBA, including Asia Wilson, the co-defensive player of the year. So the Fever, I want to keep counting them out because they're not at full strength, because the Fever don't have Caitlin Clark or Sophie Cunningham or Ari McDonald or Sydney Colson, and yet they still find ways to win. No longer are they a good story. They haven't been just a good story for quite some time now. Now, the Fever look like legitimate contenders, and forcing a game 5 against that Aces squad when Asia Wilson is able to drop 30 plus. I mean, I have to give so much credit to Stephanie White, their head coach, and to this entire team. They continue to find ways to win, even when they're
they'll also
shorthanded.
Everybody will be waiting to see how that plays out. There was some controversy in that. I will say that ties into our other game as well. Controversy as the Vegas Aces went to the podium afterwards and asked a lot about the free throw disparity. They were outshot at the free throw line 34-11 in that game. So, and in fact, Asia Wilson said a couple of times that there were special whistles. So there's going to be fines coming for the way that Becky Hammon and Asia Wilson talked about the officiating. And I think a message was sent about how they want the game to be called in Game 5. But that's not the only issue that happened over the weekend with WNBA and officiating, because the Minnesota Lynx have now been eliminated. They've been completely eliminated. Congratulations. Phoenix takes them down. They are headed to the WNBA Finals, which is great. It's a great story. But in the process, it's impossible to talk about that and not talk about the fact that they went into the last game of this series without their best player and without their head coach. Their best player, Nafisa Collier, was injured on a play that the coach felt should have been a foul. And Cheryl Reeve was so adamant about it that she was ejected from the game. Afterwards, she went to the mic and she made her opinion on the officiating very clear, to the point that she was then suspended for a game for asking how the league could possibly put these crews on these games. We are seeing huge coaches in the WNBA come out and speak loudly, Caroline, about the fact that there is an issue with the game, the way these games are being called. And at some point, that's going to have to be acknowledged. We are seeing a rash of injuries across the sport. We are seeing absolute, whether you want to call it physicality, whatever it is, there is some level of A, inconsistency with the way the games are being called. B, there's a level of physicality that's resulting in injury everywhere. And C, you've got legendary big brand head coaches speaking out on it day in and day out. The WNBA has an issue at this point.
We heard Becky Hammon speak a lot about her issues with the officiating. Becky Hammon, head coach of the Las Vegas Aces, she talked about how a lot of the coaches on her coaching staff come from the NBA and how they have said this stuff would never fly in the NBA. Becky Hammon said, if I did, in the street, what they're doing to each other on the court, I would get arrested. And we also heard Cheryl Reeve, the head coach of the Minnesota Lynx, call for a change in leadership in WNBA officiating. And look, I understand that sometimes coaches can speak to the referees and speak to the league through the media to try and get some tactical advantages. I think that is in play here, but I also think that it is just a very fair call to action. That Nafisa Collier didn't shoot a single free throw in Game 3. How is Nafisa Collier, who has the ball as much as she has it, not getting fouled once in an incredibly physical game? Now, look, the postseason in any sport, the physicality gets ratcheted up a little bit. We see it in hockey. We see it in football. We see it in basketball as well. I think it's a fair expectation that maybe, just maybe, the refs swallow their whistle just a little bit more in the postseason. But it does feel like the WNBA refs have been swallowing their whistle just a little bit too much. And now we're seeing Nafisa Collier, who had MVP buzz all season long. She was an MVP caliber player, one of the best players in the league, out in a critical Game 4 because she got injured. Now we're seeing, some of the best star players across the league get injured because of just the roughness and the physicality that we're seeing on the court. So can you say that the coaches are just boohoo crying and whining about officiating? Yeah, maybe so. And I'll be the first person to say, okay, hush up, stop your whining, wipe your tears, and go out there and win basketball games. But I do think what these coaches are saying is incredibly valid, not just because of what we've seen in the postseason, but this has been an issue in the W all season long and over the last couple of years. You have to protect your players.
as you see on the graphic there, you've got two other coaches that had no skin in the outcome of this game agreeing with the comments being made by Reeve. You've got two prominent coaches that are still playing right now, still coaching right now, making these statements. I think that there's substance to that. I think that matters, right? Like, there is a moment where certainly when coaches tussle afterwards or when coaches say things, it's easy for another coach to say, I'm going to stay as politically correct on this and stay away from it. We didn't see Becky Hammond do that, right? So I do think that there's weight to this when you've got, Stephanie White coming out and saying, I think that she made a lot of valid points. I think that at some point there has to be some accountability. Those are strong words about what has obviously become an issue. And you can see it and feel it down the stretch of these games. Like just the inconsistency within the game of how it's being called at times. And then when you just see the last 3-4 minutes and it becomes the worst of the worst with where they're blowing the whistles and where they aren't, that Nafisa Collier moment was so damning, not just because of the turnover, but because it cost that team an opportunity. For the second straight year, Minnesota Lynx fans feel like they have been robbed in the playoffs because of officiating. I don't think, and the NBA has done such a good job for so many years with the 2-minute report and coming out and being transparent about these things. It's hard not to look at the W and say, hey, give us the info. Like, how did we get here? Who are these officials? How did we make these decisions? And what are you doing to make sure that these officials are doing the best possible job? Because it feels out of control. Like that moment you see right there was an entire staff holding back a well-respected coach that looked like she was about to lose her mind and just go after the ref. Like, it's a bad look for the league. It's a bad look for the sport. It's a bad look for the game. We're not talking about the games as much as we're talking about the officiating. That's a problem for the W, Caroline.
And unfortunately, that's nothing new. We have been talking about the refs more than we've been talking about the games really for a while now. You just mentioned it. The Lynx feel like they got totally robbed in the WNBA finals because of officiating. And I sometimes think, officiating and ref talk gets way, way, way overblown. That sometimes it comes at the hands of just a salty fan base that wants to blame the referees more than blaming their own team or their own coach or their own star players. But in the WA, I think that it is an officiating problem. It is a refereeing problem. Cheryl Reeve is the winningest head coach in WNBA history. Cheryl Reeve has been around for a very long time and has won a whole lot of basketball games. I give Cheryl Reeve a whole lot of credit for sticking up for the league, not just sticking up for her team and her star player, Nafisa Collier, but sticking up for the players in this league. Cheryl Reeve knew what was going to happen when she called for a change in leadership. She knew it would be a fine, and she probably knew that it would warrant a suspension in the postseason, and she did it anyways. I think Cheryl Reeve looked at it and said, well, one, I don't know how far my team can go and how many games my team can win without Nafisa Collier. Now, they were able to prove they were able to win games without Nafisa Collier in the regular season, but Cheryl Reeve may have looked at it and said, look, I am willing to face a suspension if it means critical change will happen in this league. And I give Cheryl Reeve a whole lot of credit for it.
That's something W coaches and players have done for a long time. They will always sacrifice the moment if they think it's better for the league long term. It's really interesting. All right, we've got a huge Monday night coming at you. Monday night doubleheader. Is Bo going to turn things around? We'll figure it out next. Breaking, free agent Al Horford has committed to a multi-year deal with the Golden State Warriors. That according to his agent. After 7 of the past 9 years in Boston and winning the 2024 title, Horford will enter his 19th NBA season as the Warriors' starting center. Now, for Golden State fans that have been sitting around saying, we're going to make a massive move, there's an incredible splash coming, we are going to do something that will shock the world, the answer is Al Horford? This might be your grandpa's favorite basketball team. Look, the Golden State Warriors did nothing to get younger. The Golden State Warriors did nothing to bridge towards their future. And the Golden State Warriors did nothing to really suddenly make everybody believe that they should be seen as a different team this year than we thought they were 48 hours ago. But they did bring in somebody that they can rely on that's won a championship, that will understand the culture of professionalism that is part of how Golden State does everything. As long as you have Steph, you have a chance for greatness. But it's fair to also acknowledge that the conversation around Golden State simply isn't now what it was. And it may never be again. The era we saw of the best of Golden State was something we all needed to cherish in the moment instead of trying to figure out how it ranked with other dynasties. Because now, as we see it sort of petering out, we have to understand that the Warriors are going to do the best they can every year to put the best talent they can every year around the stars that everybody loves. You see the lineup there, and I ask you, when you see the lineup on your screen, are you suddenly intimidated by this version of Golden State? Does this version of Golden State feel like it's deeper and better ready to handle a long playoff run and a long series, especially at their age, as some of the young teams that have been built the slow and steady way across the NBA? I think the answer is probably not. You do see there that he was a veteran stretch center they targeted early in free agency. Congratulations to Horford. I love seeing players play as long as they can play. And I love the idea of a savvy, experienced, veteran Golden State team coming in and saying from day one, we know how we're going to do this. We know what we're going to do, and we know how we're going to manage the minutes to be capable at the end of the year. But I think it's also fair to say at the same time that Golden State no longer strikes fear into the hearts of NBA fans everywhere. Caroline Fenton, it's Monday. And that means we have Monday Night Football. We got a little doubleheader coming up. We got 2 games, and I'm marginally excited for a couple of – this is different than the last Monday Night doubleheader for 2 reasons. One of those games was too late. 10 p.m. is too late for a kickoff. 2, these games suck, and at least we're getting them layered on top of each other. So now you can bounce back. You can split screen the suck. Like, that feels like it's a Monday night win. And the Dolphins are in their alt jerseys, which some people seem to hate. I love them. I love they're like a midnight black, like they're very sleek. I'm in on the Dolphins jerseys. I'm trying to find a positive here.
Yeah, when we start talking about the jerseys, that's kind of when that's maybe the lone bright spot here. Maybe another bright spot could be that everybody's going to have fun and make memories. Maybe ticket prices are low. So like those are all good things. Those are all positive things about this game tonight, and it's football. I think that tonight is a great reminder that we went 6 months like Moses in the desert with no football. So I guess shut up and enjoy any kind of football that you can have on your TV, even if it's bad football. I think. What do you think we could take away from this game tonight? Like, what are potential? I do
think that the level of suck provides some fun opportunity of takeaways. Like, if the Dolphins go in and just get beat down. Like, if the Dolphins get just seriously beat by the Jets, is that it for Mike McDaniel? Like, I think that's a real conversation.
Totally.
It's okay to not be in the same stratosphere as the Bills. Maybe you have to accept that. But if you go out there and you get beat down by the Jets, the Jets suck, man, I don't know how Dolphins ownership will accept that. Now, Dolphins ownership may be a little bit more hands-off and patient, but I don't know. It feels like there's so much smoke around Mike McDaniel. Like, maybe there's fire if there's a particularly awful outcome tonight.
I think that there absolutely could be. And dare I say, should there be? I mean, I don't know how the Dolphins view, one, the expectations, and 2, the potential of this football team. But if you feel like you have some there, if you feel like you have a potential of eking into the to playoffs as a wild card, then do you feel like you have to make a move to try and salvage what you have of your football team? Like, I don't know if the Dolphins feel like there is anyone on staff that could step on right now and be a better option at the head coaching position than Mike McDaniel. But with how bad it's been, it does just feel like things are stale. Things need to change. There needs to be a shift in ownership, in leadership rather. So I think that is a potential thing that we could see tonight, but that would in fact mean that the Jets would have to beat the Dolphins as bad as it would take to warrant a firing. I don't know if the Jets are capable of that, but I think that does bring up a fair point about Justin Fields. Justin Fields will get the start tonight. What do we see from Justin Fields? Is there a career renaissance to be had for Justin Fields, whether it happens with the Jets or elsewhere? Can Justin Fields show us, show coaches across the league, put the NFL on notice that he's not what he was in Pittsburgh, that he can be a solid option as a starting quarterback? Do we start to see Justin Fields stay healthy enough to be able to do that, and do that enough to put us all on notice? What is Justin Fields capable of?
I think, honestly, we've seen what Justin Fields is capable of. And he's going to go out and he's going to have some really nice runs. And then if he has to throw the ball, it's going to look really weird. I want Justin Fields to be really successful. I want the Jets and Justin Fields to have the same reclamation that we've seen for Daniel Jones and the Colts. I think that'd be such a cool story. I just don't think it's happening here. And I think we're going to end up with a really bad football game because of it. What about the other one, the Bengals-Broncos? Like, are we in? Because let's be real, Bo Nix hasn't necessarily looked like Bo Nix. So, like, are Broncos fans waking up tomorrow morning feeling better about Bo?
They better. I mean, they better. It is like, it would be Jekyll and Hyde, hot and cold. Not like we gave it his all. No, not against this Bengals team. I do feel like, Fitz, we are robbed of one of the best matchups in the NFL, and that would be Ja'Marr Chase versus Pat Surtain. I even talked to Pat Surtain about that at the Super Bowl. I asked him, who's the hardest wide receiver to cover that you've ever covered? And he said, back in that LSU-Alabama game, the LSU boys, Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase, that was the hardest matchup that I've ever gone against. And that was Pat Surtain, coming off of several years in the league at that point. So Pat Surtain, one of the best, if not the best corners in the National Football League. Ja'Marr Chase, one of the best, if not the best wide receivers in the National Football League. The fact that it will be Jake Browning throwing passes to Ja'Marr Chase and not Joe Burrow, I feel like robs us of an awesome matchup, or what could be an awesome matchup. But this feels like a great opportunity, Fitz, for the Broncos to get their lick back. They're coming in limping, losing back-to-back games. Is this an opportunity for Bo Nix to get right, this team to get right against a Bengals team that is, defense is not very good and does not look nearly as explosive, not even one iota of explosive offensively as they do with Joe Burrow at the helm?
I think there's a level of panic that comes to the loser of this because, to your point, if the Broncos get that back, so if the Broncos lose this game to go to 1-3, everybody's going to be shocked. They were one of the darlings coming into the season. So going to 1-3 would be a shocking result for the Broncos. But the flip side of it is there were plenty of Bengals fans that felt like after the Jags game, no, we're fine. Jake Browning's going to be great. It's okay. It was not okay last week. And if it is, again, not okay this week, Bengals fans are going to be losing their minds. And I think we're all going to be reminded of this consistently because we got so many games this year where they expected Joe Burrow, so the schedule makers are putting Cincinnati in a good spot. So we just we see this over and over and over again. We are going to have to make Jake Browning work in our minds repeatedly throughout the course of the season. Think about how great a Bengals-Ravens matchup seemed to all of us in June and how bad that looks right now. So the question in my mind becomes,
it's going to be a Nick Jr.
Just right, 100%. And if Jake Browning just sucks in this game, do the Bengals actually have to pick up the phone? Do the Bengals actually have to start calling around and saying, hey, Kirk Cousins, I don't care. Like Russ, although I think Russ is washed. Like, do they have to do something if Jake Browning is tragically bad in this game, given the weapons they have and the expectations they have?
They have incredibly high expectations. I mean, we were talking about the Broncos as a potential Super Bowl dark horse. We were talking about this defense being the best in the National Football League, and none of that has come to fruition, not to mention the fact that we expected Bo Nix to take that next step forward, and we haven't seen that. Now, the season is still early. There is still a lot left for the Broncos to achieve. There is still a lot more that the Broncos can do. Like, do not get me wrong on that, but Tonight feels like the opportunity to do it. If you can't do it against Jake Browning in the Bengals, how can we expect you to do it against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and then the Chargers and the rest of these teams in the AFC? This is an opportunity for the Denver Broncos.
I have the Broncos winning this game. What about you?
I have the Broncos winning this game, and I have the Broncos winning this game handedly. They should.
Yeah,
they better.
We agree on that. What about the first one? What about Miami and the Jets? Who you got? I think I lean Miami.
Jets.
I think I lean Miami back. I lean Miami backs against the wall. Win one for the Gipper. The old coach thing. Like maybe that's a reason.
You know, I was very impressed by what we saw from the Dolphins against the Bills. That it felt like it was that very raw feeling for the coach, and they still lost. I'll take the Jets. I'll take Justin Fields comes back with a bang. Let's just say that.
Look, I'm in for all of that. We will get the drama for Monday night. We'll have all of the reaction for you right here tomorrow morning. We are with you every morning at 9 a.m. Come back and hang out with Yahoo Sports Daily then. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Have a great day. Come back tomorrow morning.